What would you do if the happiest day of your life suddenly turned into a stage for your family's darkest secrets? I remember that moment like it was yesterday, the moment when laughter and music suddenly stopped, replaced by a suffocating silence in the grand ballroom. All because Jason, my stepbrother, decided that my wedding was the perfect time to drag out every family secret we'd buried for the past 20 years. Before I tell you about that disaster, let me rewind a bit. I'm Elizabeth Peterson, but most people just call me Beth. 15 years ago, my dad, William Peterson, a successful financial consultant, remarried Linda after divorcing my mom. That marriage brought Jason, Linda's son, into our family. I was 13 then, and Jason was 15. From the start, our relationship was complicated. Not the kind where you scream and fight, but a cold distance, like we lived in two different worlds under the same roof. When my dad praised my grades, Jason would quietly leave the table. When I got a new car for my 16th birthday, Jason just stared with this faraway look. And every time my dad said, "My little girl," I saw something break in Jason's eyes. Despite the tension, life went on. I graduated from a top university, built a successful career in public relations, and met Robert, the man I truly believed I'd spend the rest of my life with. Robert was smart, calm, ambitious, everything my dad wanted in a son-in-law. After 2 years of dating, we planned a lavish beachside wedding with 250 guests, including family, friends, and my dad's business partners. The moment I sent out the invitations, I felt an uneasy knot in my stomach when I handed Jason his. He was living in San Francisco then, working at a tech startup. We hardly spoke, but I couldn't not invite him. We were still family, at least on paper. "Jason probably won't come," my mom Patricia said when we were working on the seating chart. "He always finds a way to avoid family events." But then, a week before the wedding, Jason texted me. No congratulations, no extra words, just, "I'll be there." The second I read it, a chill ran down my spine. Susan, my best friend and maid of honor, noticed the change in my face. "What's wrong?" she asked, worried. "Jason's coming to the wedding," I whispered. So quiet I could barely hear myself. Susan frowned. "And that's a problem? He's your brother." I didn't know how to explain it. How do you tell someone that after 15 years of living in the same house, Jason was still a mystery to me? That every time he looked at me, I felt judged, like I'd stolen something from him? "It's nothing," I lied. "Just one more detail to manage." Then the big day came. Everything was perfect. My Vera Wang dress fit like a dream. White orchids filled the air with a sweet fragrance. The band played our favorite song as Robert and I kissed after our vows. The reception was held at a luxury resort overlooking the ocean. Every detail was flawless, just like my mom always wanted. And then, in an instant, it all changed. Jason showed up late, half an hour into the reception. I noticed him head straight for the bar, down 2 whiskeys, then slip into the crowd. I tried to ignore it, focusing on my happiness, on Robert, on the bright future ahead. Then came the speeches and toasts. My dad went first, giving a heartfelt speech about love, family, and the future. Applause, smiles, tears of joy, glasses clinking. And that's when Jason stood up, walked to the front, and took the mic from the MC. "I've got something to say too," he began. His voice was calm but heavy enough to silence the entire room. Nobody knew it then, but from that moment on, my life would never be the same. How could a perfect wedding turn into a battlefield for secrets buried for decades? How could joy and laughter flip into tears and accusations so fast? And more importantly, how could I, the bride in a white dress, end up in the center of a storm of truth and lies, forced to make a choice that could change every relationship I had forever? This is my story. The story of the happiest day of my life and the day I learned that everything I believed in was one carefully crafted lie. The soft glow of the setting sun poured through the floor to ceiling windows, painting golden streaks across the polished walnut floor. The Ocean Cliffs Resort Ballroom was decorated with obsessive attention to detail. Swarovski crystal chandeliers sparkled above, scattering 1,000 tiny stars across the ceiling. White and blush orchids, my childhood favorites, filled the space, from tall glass vases on the tables to little baskets lining the aisle. Their delicate scent mixed with the salty sea air, creating a heady, romantic atmosphere. A 5-piece classical band sat on a small stage, drifting through light jazz, everything from La Vie en Rose, to The Way You Look Tonight. The warm saxophone wrapped around the room, while the lead singer's husky voice pulled everyone into a world of elegance and romance. Walking into the reception after our beachside ceremony, I couldn't help but feel overwhelmed with satisfaction. It was everything I'd dreamed of since I was 10, sketching wedding dresses in my notebook. My Vera Wang gown hugged my torso before flaring out gently at the hips like a cloud of silk. Tiny crystals sewn into the bodice sparkled with every move, like drops of dew in sunlight. Robert, in his classic navy Armani suit, looked impossibly handsome every inch the young CEO he was. "I can't believe this is really our wedding," Robert whispered against my ear, his hand tightening around my waist as we greeted rows of smiling guests. "You look like a princess out of a fairy tale." I smiled, trying to soak in the happiness of the moment. Still, a small part of me felt uneasy, an unnamed weight pressing down. "Elizabeth, these flowers are tilted." My mom's voice cut through my thoughts. Patricia Peterson, regal in her emerald gown, was fussing with an arrangement at the reception desk. I told them at least 3 times about the angle of these vases. "The staff here is so careless." "Mom, it's perfect," I said, keeping my voice light though irritation simmered underneath. She was always like this, demanding perfection, especially on big occasions. "Nobody's gonna notice something that small." It's the small details that make the difference, Elizabeth," she replied, still adjusting flowers. "This wedding is the event of the year. Half the city's business world is in this room. Your father's invited some very important partners." I exhaled quietly. To her, this wasn't just my wedding, it was a showcase of the Peterson family's status. The guest list proved it. CEOs, doctors, lawyers, socialites, many of them I'd never even met. Elizabeth, Susan, my best friend and maid of honor, appeared with a radiant smile, pulling me into a hug. Her warmth grounded me in a sea of strangers. "Oh my God, everything looks amazing. You are hands down the most beautiful bride I've ever seen." "Thank you," I said, feeling a little calmer. "I really need you here. It's a lot." She glanced around, then tugged me into a quiet corner. "You okay? You look worried." I took a deep breath. "I don't know. Maybe just normal bride nerves. My mom's stressing over flowers, my dad's turning this into a networking event." "And you're worried about Jason?" Susan asked softly, eyes steady on mine. My body stiffened. "He's not here yet." "Maybe he won't come," she said hopefully. "Honestly, that might be for the best." Before I could answer, a tall figure approached. My dad, William Peterson, hair neatly silvered, suit tailored to perfection, radiated authority. "My little girl," he said warmly, wrapping me in his arms. His expensive cologne mixed with a faint trace of whiskey. "I'm so proud of you. You look stunning. And Robert is one lucky man." "Thanks, Dad," I smiled, always craving his approval no matter the pressure attached. "I want to introduce you to someone," he continued, his tone shifting into business mode. "Henry Davidson from Meridian Investments is eager to meet you. He could be a potential partner for your firm's new PR campaign." I nodded, even though all I wanted was to enjoy my wedding as just a bride, not as part of the Peterson Empire's agenda. But that was how it always was. Every personal moment could double as business strategy. As he led me toward the guest, I spotted Linda, my stepmother, and Jason's mom near the bar with a glass of red wine. She wore an elegant black dress, her hair pinned up neatly. At 50, she was still beautiful. Her eyes followed us with an unreadable look. I gave her a polite nod. She returned a faint smile. That was our relationship, civil, distant, nothing more. The evening unfolded with champagne toasts and bursts of laughter. I noticed Robert laughing with his college friends who had flown in from across the country. He looked relaxed, genuinely happy, and that gave me comfort. At least one of us was enjoying the night. I checked the time after 7. Jason still hadn't shown. Maybe he really decided not to come. Part of me felt relieved, part of me oddly disappointed. He was still family after all. "Guess he's not coming," Susan whispered as she passed by with a plate of canapes. "Maybe he had the decency not to ruin your day." "Susan," I chided, though I couldn't stop a small smile. She never liked Jason, especially after seeing how cold he'd been to me back in our teenage years. Just then, the MC announced dinner. Guests moved to their carefully assigned tables, Servers in crisp uniforms, pouring wine and bringing out appetizers, a fresh seafood salad with passion fruit dressing. Robert and I sat at the head table with our parents and closest friends. No seat for Jason, my mother's decision, assuming he wouldn't come. I had asked for a spot saved at a nearby table, just in case. As we sat down, a familiar figure walked through the main doors. My heart skipped. Jason. He looked different from the boy I remembered, taller, leaner, with a neatly trimmed beard. But it was his eyes that caught me. The same deep blue, now harder, sharper, filled with a determination I'd never seen before. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo like the dress code required. Instead, a simple gray suit, white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, no tie. It was a deliberate choice, standing out among the sleek black tuxes in the room. My whole body tensed. Jason didn't glance at me or my dad. He went straight to the bar, downed a whiskey in one gulp, then ordered another. Everyone found their seats? The MC's cheerful voice rang out. Perfect. Time to raise a glass to the bride and groom. As my dad stood, ready to give his heartfelt speech, I couldn't help but look at Jason again. He was scanning the room, his gaze sharp, calculating. Our eyes met for a split second. He didn't smile, didn't nod. Instead, he smirked, an unsettling curve of his lips, the kind of smile that said he knew something no one else did. A chill raced down my spine. That vague unease I'd carried all day wasn't in my head. Something was wrong. Something was coming. And just like that, cracks began to spread across the perfect picture of my dream wedding. Jason moved through the reception like a lone wolf in a flock of sheep. With his third whiskey in hand, he slowly scanned each cheerful cluster of guests, nodding now and then at the curious looks thrown his way. I couldn't stop watching him, even while I tried to focus on the conversation with the important guest my father had just introduced. Elizabeth, right? The elegant man in the black suit asked. I've heard a lot about the PR campaign you ran for Westfield. I was impressed by how you handled their crisis. Thank you, I said with a polite smile, my eyes still cutting back to Jason. He was moving toward my father, who was chatting with a group of business partners. It was a fun challenge, but my team worked really hard. Jason caught my gaze and lifted his glass toward me, a mocking little salute. Something in his eyes made my stomach twist. That wasn't how a brother looked at his sister on her wedding day. I'm sorry, would you excuse me for a moment? I said to the guest, then slipped over to Robert, standing a few steps away. Babe, I whispered, gripping his arm. Jason's heading for my dad. Robert followed my eyes and frowned. You think there's going to be a problem? I don't know, I admitted. But the way he's looking, something's off. Robert's hand slid across my back, the gentle move he always used to calm me down. Don't worry. I'll keep an eye on it. This is our day. No one's ruining it. Before I could answer, a loud crack sounded from the bar. A glass shattered on the floor. Jason stood there, like he'd dropped it by accident. Or maybe not. He stared at the shards with an odd indifference, then turned to the bartender and ordered another without a word of apology. He's probably had too much, Robert murmured. Right then, my father noticed Jason and walked toward him. Even from a distance, I could see the tension in his face. William Peterson never liked surprises, especially at big events. Jason, I heard my dad say, his voice trying to stay warm but edged with caution. You're late. We're about to start dinner. Jason smirked without meeting his eyes. Oh, really? Sorry for not following your perfect schedule. The sarcasm couldn't have been clearer. A few guests nearby turned away, pretending not to hear. My dad set a hand on Jason's shoulder as if to steer him aside. Let's talk somewhere else. This is Elizabeth's big day. Jason slipped out from under his hand. Of course. Elizabeth's big day. Isn't it always? My heartbeat kicked up. This wasn't good. I wanted to go over, but Robert held me back. Let them handle it, he whispered. If you jump in, it might get worse. Meanwhile, Jason had moved past my father and started weaving between tables, greeting strangers with a weird, fake warmth. Good evening, he said to an elderly woman at a nearby table. Are you enjoying this perfect play? The Peterson dream wedding. The American dream, right? She looked confused, then gave a polite smile and said nothing. Susan, who'd been watching from the start, hurried to my side. What is he doing? She hissed, unable to hide her irritation. Is he seriously going to wreck your wedding? I don't know, I said, my throat tight. Maybe he's just drunk. Drunk? No, Beth, Susan said, eyes locked on Jason. He's stone. Cold, sober. Sober and dangerous. Oh, right then, Jason stopped at another table where my mom sat with a few close friends. I saw Patricia's body go rigid as he approached. Patricia, Jason said, pointedly skipping. Mom, you look stunning tonight. I have to hand it to you. You always know how to throw a lavish event, don't you? Not a single detail missed. He leaned on the word detail in a strange way. My mom smiled tightly. Thank you, Jason. Did you find your seat? If not, I can ask the staff to place you. Oh, don't worry, Jason waved her off. I won't be staying long, I just wanted to witness. He said witness slowly, loaded with meaning, and I felt a shiver run through me. I decided I couldn't let this spiral. I squeezed Robert's hand and walked toward Jason. Jason, I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. I'm glad you made it. It's been a long time. He turned to me, and for a second I thought I saw a flicker of pain in his eyes. It vanished fast, replaced by the same cool detachment. Elizabeth, he said, suddenly gentle. Our bride, you look beautiful. He gave me a slow once-over. Vera Wang, right? Must have cost a fortune. Thank you, I said, ignoring the price comment. Can we talk in private for a minute? He arched a brow. Private? On your big day? I wouldn't want to bother you. I want to talk, I insisted, keeping a smile because I could feel eyes on us. He glanced around, then nodded. All right, little sister, lead the way. I brought him out to a small balcony off the ballroom where we could talk without being overheard. The ocean air was cool and sharp, and I shivered. From the breeze or from nerves? Maybe both. What are you doing? I asked bluntly once we were alone. You showed up late, you keep drinking, and you're saying weird things to my guests. What's going on? Jason leaned against the railing and stared at the black water. He didn't answer right away. He took a sip of whiskey, then looked back at me. Don't you see the irony, Elizabeth? He said at last. All of this. He waved a hand toward the ballroom. The perfect wedding. The perfect family. The perfect life. It's all theater. Heat flared in my chest. If you came here just to ruin my day, you should leave. Ruin it? Jason let out a dry laugh. No, Elizabeth. I came to attend. To witness. I'm just curious how many of those guests know the truth behind this perfect Peterson portrait. What are you talking about? I asked, my mouth dry. Jason stepped closer. Close enough that I could smell the whiskey on his breath. You really don't know, do you? Or are you pretending? You've always been a good actress. William Peterson's perfect princess. Before I could answer, the balcony door opened and Robert walked out. He looked between us, worry written all over his face. Everything okay? Robert asked, moving to my side like a shield. Oh, look who's here, Jason said with a thin smile. The knight in shining armor. You and Elizabeth make quite the pair, Robert. Does he know everything, Elizabeth? Or is he part of the show too? Robert frowned. I don't know what you're getting at, but you should calm down. This is our wedding day. Jason studied him. Right. Your wedding day. Congratulations. He lifted his glass. To happily ever after, or at least until the truth comes out. With that, he drained his drink and brushed past us, heading back inside, leaving me and Robert standing there with a knot of dread we couldn't shake. I don't understand, I whispered. What is he talking about? What truth? Robert wrapped an arm around my shoulders. I don't know, babe, but don't let it get to you. Jason's clearly going through something and taking it out on us. I nodded, trying to believe him. But deep down, I couldn't ignore the way Jason spoke. The look in his eyes. He was pointing to something real, something specific I didn't know. When we returned to the ballroom, dinner was already being served. Jason had found a seat at a table in the back, where he sat alone, not engaging with anyone. He barely touched his food, just kept drinking and watching. Susan pulled me aside as I walked by. Beth, what's going on with him? He's acting so strange. I don't know, I sighed. He keeps talking about some truth about my family, but I have no idea what he means. Susan's face tightened. Do you think he actually knows something? A cold shiver ran down my spine. I don't know. How would I know? Dinner dragged on under a cloud of tension. I smiled and made small talk, but my eyes kept sliding back to Jason. He didn't eat. He just drank and observed. After dessert, The MC announced it was time for speeches and toasts. My father would go first, then Robert's father, then Robert, and finally me. My dad stood, adjusted his tie, and walked to the mic set up near the small stage where the band played. He cleared his throat, and the room settled. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, confident as ever, today is a very special day for our family. Before he could continue, I caught movement in the corner of the room. Jason had stood and was heading for the stage with a frightening kind of resolve. Under the table, Susan grabbed my hand. "Beth," she whispered, urgent. "What is he about to do?" I couldn't answer. I could only watch, dread rising, as Jason closed in on my father. My dad paused mid-sentence when he saw Jason approaching. A flicker of worry crossed his face, but he quickly slipped back into his practiced calm. "And of course," he said smoothly, trying to keep control, "my son, Jason, would also like to say a few words." "Jason, would you like to speak?" It was a neat attempt to manage the moment, but I could tell Jason wasn't buying it. He stepped up beside my father and, with a firm gesture, took the mic from his hand. "Thank you, William," Jason said, pointedly skipping Dad. "Yes, I have a lot to say." He turned and swept his gaze around the room, letting it rest on me for a beat before moving across the silent crowd. "You know," Jason began, voice low but clear, "I spent a long time thinking about what to say on this special day, about how to offer the usual congratulations to the happy couple." He paused and took a sip from the glass he still held. "But then I realized," he went on, his voice hardening, "that instead of empty toasts, I should share a story. A true story about the Peterson family. A story I think all of you deserve to hear." My heart stopped. Next to me, Robert squeezed my hand. All around us, the room fell into a hush, some faces curious, others confused. And in that moment, I knew the storm I'd felt brewing all day had finally hit. The room fell into a strange silence. The band cut the music. All you could hear was the soft hum of the AC and faint clattering from the kitchen. Every eye locked on Jason, standing on the small stage with the mic in his hand, like an actor about to give the performance of his life. My father, William, stood beside him with a stiff smile, his eyes shifting from surprise to worry to caution. He set a hand on Jason's shoulder, maybe trying to take the mic back, but Jason slid away. "Sorry for the interruption," Jason began, voice low and dripping with irony. "But I think it's time we're honest with each other, especially on a day so full of love and sincerity." He paused, took a sip of whiskey, then went on with a slight smile. "You know, I grew up in the Peterson family for the past 15 years. Or more accurately, I grew up watching William Peterson build the image of a perfect father, devoted husband, successful businessman." Jason looked my dad straight in the eye. William tried to stay calm, but I could see his jaw tighten. "But there's another story. One most people in this room don't know. And I think on a day like this, we should share the truth. Because marriage should be built on truth, right?" Robert's hand tightened around mine under the table. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. "William," Jason turned to my father, his tone suddenly sharp. "Why don't you tell everyone about Margaret Lawson in Chicago?" My dad's face drained of color. The careful calm he'd been holding cracked in an instant. "Jason," he said hoarsely, "this isn't the time or the place." "When is the time then?" Jason cut in, louder. "When is the right time to talk about the woman you've been seeing in secret for 12 years? The woman you kept seeing even after you remarried my mother?" A rush of breath swept the room. I looked at my mom, Patricia, frozen like a statue, her champagne glass tilted, spilling down her emerald dress. "I have proof," Jason said, his voice stronger, more sure. "Emails, hotel bills, details of expensive gifts. The kind William never bought for Patricia or Linda." He flicked a glance at his mother in the corner, a strange smile on her face. "Want me to read a few emails, William?" Jason asked, pulling his phone from his pocket. "Or do you want to explain it yourself?" My dad stepped forward, trying to take control. "Jason, that's enough. You're ruining your sister's wedding." "Ruining it?" Jason snorted. "Or making it honest? Elizabeth deserves to know her perfect father is a liar and a cheat." He turned to me, and for a heartbeat I saw pity in his eyes. "You deserve the truth, Elizabeth. We all do." Right then, my mother's glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. The sharp crack cut through the quiet. Patricia stood slowly, face white, lips trembling. "William," she said, barely audible, "is this true?" My dad stood there under the crystal lights like a trapped animal. For the first time in my life, I saw him without his usual confidence. He looked at my mother, then at me, then swept his eyes over the room filled with business partners, friends, and the relationships he'd built for years. "Patricia," he said at last, voice dropping, "we need to talk in private." "No!" Jason barked into the mic. "No more private, no more secrets. Everyone here deserves to know the truth about William Peterson, the man who boasts about his perfect family while sneaking around on the people he claims to love." That. A few guests stood awkwardly, unsure whether to leave. Others sat frozen, watching like it was a tragic play they couldn't look away from. My head spun, like the whole room tilted. This couldn't be real. My father, the model of perfection who taught me about family and loyalty, couldn't be a cheating man. He couldn't. "Elizabeth," Robert whispered in my ear, "do you want to step outside?" I shook my head, unable to speak. I had to stay. I had to hear it all. "But that's only the first part," Jason went on, not slowing down. "William and Margaret aren't just some affair. They have a child together. A child William has secretly supported for years." This time the gasp was louder. My mother almost collapsed, but a friend caught her. "William has two families," Jason said bitterly. "The one he shows off, with Elizabeth, the perfect daughter, and the secret one, with a child he never publicly acknowledged." I felt sick. The world blurred, leaving only Jason's voice echoing in my head. A brother or sister I never knew existed? How? "Jason," my dad snapped, anger finally breaking through. "You've crossed the line." He lunged toward Jason, maybe to snatch the mic, but Jason stepped back fast. "Don't touch me," Jason nearly shouted. "You don't get to do that, William. Not after everything you've done." The room went dead quiet. Even the whispers stopped. Everyone stared at the showdown on stage. "I found everything just a week ago," Jason said, lowering his voice but still clear through the mic. "I stumbled on William's emails on my mother's computer. At first I didn't believe it. How can a man live two lives like that? How can he look his wife and daughter in the eye every day and keep lying?" He turned and looked straight at me. "Elizabeth, you deserve the truth about the man you worship. And Patricia," he looked toward my mother, "you deserve the truth about the man you gave your life to." A ragged sob tore from my mother. Patricia was crying, her shoulders shaking. Friends crowded around her, whispering comfort, but I could tell nothing could touch that pain. I looked to Robert, reaching for some anchor in the storm, but instead of shock or confusion, he looked like he already knew. There was something in his eyes, no surprise, worry, like he was already planning how to handle this. "Robert?" I whispered, my heart slamming. "You knew about this?" Before Robert could answer, Jason pressed on, his voice edged with bitter triumph. "And that's just the beginning, folks, because there's another secret the Petersons are hiding. A secret about money, power, and how William Peterson lied not only to his family but to his business partners." It felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The happiest day of my life had become a wreck I couldn't fix. And the worst part was, I no longer knew what was real and what was a lie. Jason wasn't done. He was only getting started, tearing down everything I believed in. The room erupted into chaos after Jason's words, like a match dropped into dry grass. Guests whispered in frantic clusters, some stood uncertainly, and others pulled out their phones despite the no devices request. I could already see the headlines in tomorrow's papers. The Peterson wedding disaster. My mother, Patricia, managed to steady herself. Her eyes were bloodshot, makeup streaked with tears. She strode straight toward William, who still stood frozen on stage. "Answer me, William." Her voice cut through the noise, sharp and commanding. "Is it true? Have you been lying to me for 12 years? For the first time in my life, my father looked small. He had always seemed towering, unshakable, a man who could solve any problem. But under the blinding lights and hundreds of eyes, he shrank. "Patricia!" he rasped. "We need to talk privately." "No more privacy," my mother cried, tears streaming. "You made it public the moment you betrayed me. I want the truth. Now." From across the room, Linda, my stepmother, Jason's mother, rose. Calm, almost regal, as though she'd been waiting for this. William, she said softly, her voice cutting like glass. Maybe it's time you were honest, not just with Patricia, with everyone. My dad's face twisted in horror. You knew? Linda's bitter smile was answer enough. Of course I knew. I've known for a while. Why do you think I left my computer open, knowing Jason would stumble across your emails? A collective gasp swept the room. This wasn't just an affair, it was a setup. Linda had wanted the truth exposed. You mean you wanted this? William stammered. To expose you? Linda tilted her head, her smile icy. Yes. It's about time people saw the real William Peterson, a liar, a betrayer, not just of his first wife, but of me too. While accusations flew, I felt like I was drowning in a nightmare. Robert's arm came around me, protective, but I could feel the tension vibrating through him. Tell me, William, Patricia demanded again, her voice breaking. Do you have another child? A child you've hidden from us all these years? Then another voice rose steady, familiar. My Uncle Frederick, my dad's younger brother, is visiting from Boston. Bill, he said, using the old family nickname. I warned you. I told you the truth always finds a way out. I spun toward him. Uncle. You knew? He nodded, his face lined with guilt. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I've known about Margaret and the child for years. I begged your father to come clean, but he refused. The words barely sank in before another blow landed. Mr. Davidson, one of my father's longest business partners, stood abruptly and headed for the exit. I think I've heard enough, he said loudly. His face was tight with anger. William, we'll talk Monday. More guests followed, grabbing coats and purses, murmuring awkward apologies to me and Robert before fleeing the wreckage of the night. Then came the sound that split the air, a slap, sharp and merciless. Patricia had struck William. 25 years, she sobbed, her voice cracking. I gave you 25 years. I sacrificed my career. I stood by every decision. I was loyal, and this is what I get? William held his cheek, stunned, silent. Jason stood nearby, still gripping the mic, looking almost pleased, as if watching the play he'd orchestrated unfold exactly as he'd planned. Mom, I whispered, trying to move toward Patricia. Please. But she didn't hear me. She whirled on Linda. And you? You knew? You let me play the fool in front of everyone? Linda shook her head, her face suddenly weary. I only found out recently, Patricia. Believe me, I know your pain. I've been betrayed too. A bitter laugh cut through the room. Jason again, his voice raw, cracking with something darker than joy. Beautiful, isn't it? He said into the mic. The perfect Peterson family finally exposed. Years of pride, of lies, of William parading his perfect daughter, his perfect life gone in minutes. Jason, that's enough. Linda snapped, fury in her tone now. But Jason didn't stop. No, Mom, it's not enough, because there's worse. People need to know how William built his empire, how he lied, not just to his wives and kids, but to his business partners too. My eyes widened. There's more? And then I saw them guests holding up their phones, filming, capturing every second. By tomorrow, the whole city would be watching. The Peterson legacy, my father's company, everything destroyed overnight. Robert, I whispered, voice shaking. Please get me out of here. But before he could answer, a new voice came from behind us. Not so fast, Elizabeth. I turned and froze. Richard Hoffman, my father's CFO, stood there, face grim. I'd known him my whole life. You should stay, Richard said. You need to hear the rest. Because what Jason's about to say doesn't just ruin your father's reputation. It threatens your future and Robert's. A chill ran down my spine. What are you talking about? Richard's gaze didn't waver. About Peterson Consulting. About the company's real financial state. About the choices Williams made, choices that could bring the whole firm down. I stood frozen, the words like daggers. The company, the bedrock of our wealth, our status was in danger? On stage, Jason raised his voice again, resolute. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you the next part of the story. About how William Peterson rewrote his will. About the true state of Peterson Consulting. And about why every single one of you should be worried if you've invested in it. I turned to Robert. This time, I knew I wasn't imagining it. He looked, not shocked, but calculating, like he'd expected this. Robert, I whispered, my voice breaking. You knew? You knew all of this? He didn't answer. And in that silence, I felt the last threads of trust unravel. For the first time, I realized I was utterly alone, caught in the middle of a storm I never saw coming, with no one left to believe in, and nothing solid left to hold on to. The once glamorous ballroom had turned into a tense arena. The guests who remained were silent, watching like they were waiting for the climax of a drama no one dared to miss. Jason stood on the stage, commanding with the mic in his hand, while my father, William Peterson, stood a few steps away, looking like a man watching his world collapse. "Let's keep going," Jason said, his voice steady and confident now. "I think it's time everyone knew the real financial situation of the Peterson family, and especially Peterson Consulting." "Oh," he pulled out his phone and scrolled like he was hunting for something specific. "I've got an email William sent his attorney a month ago. I'll read a line. We need to hide this debt as long as possible. If the shareholders find out the truth, the stock will crash and we won't be able to save the company." A murmur rippled through the room. I looked around and saw the shocked faces of my father's business partners, many of them investors in the company. "In other words," Jason went on, "Peterson Consulting, the firm William loves to brag about as a top financial consulting company in the region, is teetering on the edge of bankruptcy." "Jason!" Richard Hoffman, the CFO, called out. "You don't have the right to disclose company confidentials like this." "I don't?" Jason gave a thin smile. "What about the shareholders' right to know the truth? What about the people who trusted this company with their money?" My father finally found his voice. "Jason, you're destroying not just my reputation. You're threatening the livelihoods of hundreds of employees." "Oh, now you care about other people?" Jason shot back. "Or are you worried about your own fallout? About investors suing you for fraud? About the chance you might go to prison?" My head spun. Prison? Could my father really face criminal charges? This wasn't just bad management or risky decisions. Hiding information could be fraud. "Elizabeth," Robert whispered in my ear, "we should step outside. You don't have to listen to this." I turned to him, and a realization hit me. "You knew about this, didn't you? About the company's finances." Robert didn't answer right away, and his silence said enough. "You knew," I repeated, my voice hardening. "How long, Robert?" "Elizabeth, I can explain." "How long?" I pressed, not letting him dodge. He sighed, defeated. "About 8 months. Your father told me when we were talking about buying a house." It felt like a slap. 8 months. All that time, Robert knew my family's main source of wealth was in serious trouble and said nothing. While I tried to process that, Jason fired another shot from the stage. "But that's not all," he said, voice rising. "William revised his will 3 months ago. A major change I think everyone, especially Elizabeth, should hear." My heart thudded. "His will? Why change it now?" "In the new will," Jason said, "William completely cut me out. Not a cent. Not a single share in the company. Everything goes to Elizabeth, and a small portion to his secret child with Margaret." I reeled. He cut Jason out entirely? No matter their issues, that was extreme. "But that's not even the worst part," Jason added. "What's wild is he didn't do it to protect Elizabeth's future. He did it because he knew I'd started questioning his financial decisions. He was afraid that if I inherited any part of the company, I'd start digging and uncover what he's done." William lunged toward him, reaching for the mic, but Jason stepped back fast. "Don't touch me," he barked. "I have the right to tell the truth." "Not like this," William roared. "Not at my daughter's wedding." "When then?" Jason shot back. "When is the right time to tell people you used my college fund to bail out the company after the 2008 crisis? That you promised to pay it back and never did?" I jolted. I'd never heard this before. My father used Jason's college money? The money his mother saved for him? Linda, standing nearby, nodded. "It's true, Elizabeth. Your father convinced me to loan him Jason's college fund. He promised it was temporary. 15 years later, we haven't seen a dime." "No." I turned to Patricia, still standing there, stunned and hurting. "Mom, did you know about this?" She shook her head, unable to speak. "Of course she didn't," Jason said. "William always kept the finances separate. Patricia only knew what he wanted her to know. Same as the rest of us." Just then, an older man stood from a nearby table. I recognized James Wilson, one of my father's earliest investors. "William," Mr. Wilson said, heavy with disappointment, I've trusted you for 20 years. I put my retirement fund into your company. Is any of this true? My father lowered his head, unable to meet his old friend's eyes. That said everything. Oh God, Mr. Wilson whispered, face ashen. I've lost everything. Not just you, Jason said, scanning the room. How many of you invested in Peterson Consulting? How many trusted William with your life savings? Hands went up, and with each one, my heart sank. This wasn't just a family crisis anymore. This was a disaster, hurting people who did nothing wrong. But wait, there's more, Jason said, scrolling again. I have internal financial reports showing the company's been insolvent for at least 6 months. William hid it by shuffling money between accounts to create the illusion of healthy cash flow. Richard Hoffman shot to his feet. That's enough. These are serious allegations that need to be verified. We're not discussing this here. Oh, but we are, Jason said. Because you're involved too, aren't you, Richard? You signed those false financials. You helped William hide the truth. Richard blanched. He couldn't deny it. I felt sick. Every pillar in my life was crumbling. One by one, the people I trusted were exposed as liars. Jason turned to me, and his eyes softened for a second. Elizabeth, you may not know this, but the family assets, the mansion, the investments, your college fund, they're all secured against company shares. When the company collapses, and it will, all of that goes with it. I shook my head. No, that can't be. It's the truth, Jason said. And Robert knows it. That's why you two postponed buying a house, right, Robert? Because you knew the investment from William wouldn't come through. I looked at Robert, stiff beside me. Is that why you said we should wait until after the wedding to buy a place? He nodded slowly, pained. I didn't want to worry you. Worry me? I almost shouted. Or did you not want me to know there wouldn't be any money coming from my family? The words were out before I could stop them. It wasn't fair. Robert isn't a gold digger. But anger and confusion had me by the throat. Elizabeth, Susan said, gripping my hand. Breathe. This isn't the moment for rash judgments. How could I breathe? In an hour, my entire world had flipped. My father, the man I admired, had betrayed not just us but everyone who trusted him. My husband kept vital truths from me about our future. And now everything I thought I had, safety, stability, a sure future, could vanish in a blink. One more thing, Jason said, his voice tired now, like he'd spent everything on this reveal. William didn't just cut me out of the will. He made sure that if anything happens to the company, Elizabeth will be the primary legal party on the hook, because he secretly transferred a big block of shares into her name. My mouth fell open. What? How is that possible? I didn't even know about it. Exactly, Jason said. He did it without telling you, using the power of attorney you signed a few years back. Remember? When he said it was just paperwork for managing your trust? I remembered it. Signing documents, my father handed me without reading closely, trusting completely that he was protecting me. So, Jason said, when this collapses, and it will soon, you'll be the one facing creditors, furious investors, maybe even criminal charges. William set you up as the scapegoat, Elizabeth. The room went dead silent after that. I felt the floor dropping out from under me. It wasn't just that my father betrayed my trust. He'd put me in danger to save himself. Dad, I said, my voice shaking but clear. Is this true? William Peterson, the man I'd admired my whole life, the man I thought was the model of success and integrity, couldn't look me in the eye. And that was all the answer I needed. The world around me seemed to blur. The noise of the room, the accusations, the shocked whispers, my mother's sobs faded, like I was hearing it all through thick glass. The crystal lights overhead, once dazzling, now felt like they were mocking me, reminding me how fake all of this shine really was. I stepped back slowly, searching for a quiet corner in the chaos. My expensive Vera Wang dress suddenly felt heavy, like it was pulling me under. The crystals on the bodice looked like 1,000 shards of my life, glittering bitterly under the lights. A wave of dizziness hit, and I grabbed a chair to steady myself. My mind started rewinding through moments, clues I should have seen a long time ago. My father disappears on weekends for business trips. The secret phone calls he always took out on the balcony. The way he changed the subject whenever I asked about the company's finances. The times Robert got tense when we talked about buying a house, he always suggested we wait. It was all right in front of me and I didn't see it. Or maybe I chose not to. I'd been too busy playing the perfect daughter in the perfect family, too focused on crafting the perfect wedding to notice it was all a sandcastle slipping away. Elizabeth? Susan's voice pulled me back. She stood in front of me, worry in her eyes. Are you okay? You look pale. I couldn't answer. How do you explain that you feel like you're drowning? Like everything you ever believed was a lie? I need air. I finally rasped, my voice so hoarse I barely recognized it. I need to go outside. Susan took my hand and steered me through the buzzing crowd to the balcony. When the door shut behind us, the noise dropped, leaving only the sound of waves and a soft breeze brushing my hair. I drew a deep breath, salty ocean air filling my lungs. Even that clean air couldn't break the tight band around my chest. Is any of this real? I whispered, more to myself than to Susan. Is my father really that kind of man? A cheater? A fraud? Someone willing to sacrifice his daughter to save himself? Susan squeezed my hand. Beth, I don't know what's true and what's not in what Jason said. What I know is you don't deserve this on your wedding day. Wedding day. The words felt foreign. Was this even a wedding anymore? Or the opening scene of my family's total collapse of my life's collapse? Then memories flooded in, a rush I couldn't stop. Pieces of my life, now colored by the truth that had just come out. I remembered how my father always gave me what he never gave Jason. The new car when I graduated, trips to Europe, tuition at a top school, while Jason worked extra jobs to cover his own. I remembered the hurt in Jason's eyes when my father introduced me to business partners with pride but barely mentioned him. I remembered the distant way Linda looked at my father, like she always knew she wasn't the only woman in his heart. I didn't see it, I murmured, tears spilling over. All these years, I didn't see what was right in front of me. Don't blame yourself, Susan said gently. You're not the only one. William hid it well. But I'm his daughter, I almost shouted. I lived with him my whole life. I should have known. Then another thought hit, sharper, worse. Robert knew. He knew about the finances and the risk of collapse, and he said nothing. 8 months while we planned a wedding and dreamed about our future, and he kept a secret that big. And Robert, I whispered, my chest tightening. He lied to me. Oh, maybe he was trying to protect you, Susan said, trying to soothe me. Maybe he didn't want to worry you. Protect me? I laughed. Bitter. Or protect himself? Jason said my dad promised to invest in Robert's startup. Maybe that's why he stayed quiet. To keep that money on the table. The second I said it, I regretted it. That wasn't fair to Robert. He isn't someone who chases money. I know he loves me. But in this pain and confusion, I couldn't stop questioning everything and everyone. Beth, Susan said, gripping my shoulders so I'd look at her. Don't make judgments right now. Breathe. We'll figure this out. I nodded, trying to do what she said. But how do you stay calm when every foundation in your life is cracking? Then another thought crashed in, even worse. If Jason was telling the truth, I could be in serious legal trouble. If my father really transferred a big block of shares to me without telling me, I could look complicit in defrauding investors. My PR career, a career built on trust and credibility, could be destroyed. I could face criminal charges. I whispered, panic rising. I could lose everything. My career, my reputation, my future. Don't jump to the worst-case scenario, Susan said, steady. We don't know if everything Jason said is accurate. And even if it is, you're a victim here, not the culprit. But even as a victim, I could still lose everything. And not just me, there was Patricia, my mom, who gave her life to building this family, to supporting my father's career. She could lose everything she worked for. And the employees at Peterson Consulting, hundreds of people whose livelihoods depend on the company. If it collapses, they lose jobs, income, maybe their homes. And the investors, the people who trusted my father with their life savings, they could lose it all. The scale of the damage my father might have caused felt immeasurable. And I, even without meaning to, had become part of it. I have to do something, I said, my voice shaking but gaining steel. I can't let this keep going. What do you mean? Susan asked, worried. I have to face my father. I need the whole truth. And then, I drew a long breath. Then I have to decide where I stand in all of this. Susan studied me. Are you sure? Maybe now isn't the time. If not now, when? I cut in. I've lived in lies for too long, Susan. I can't keep doing it. As I said, something new rose in me, not just pain or fear or anger, but resolve. A resolve to face the truth, no matter how much it hurts. A resolve to stop being a victim of other people's lies. I stared out at the dark ocean and listened to the steady beat of the waves. Like those waves, the truth always reaches the shore, no matter how hard you try to hold it back. And now that it was here, I had to decide what to do with it. I'm going back, I said, my voice steadier. You're sure? Susan asked. I nodded. I need to hear everything Jason has to say. I need to look my father in the eye and know if he could really do this to his daughter. And I need to talk to Robert. Really talk. Susan squeezed my hand one last time before we headed back to the room where every secret was being dragged into the light, where my life was being reshaped minute by minute. As my hand closed around the door handle, I knew the woman walking into that room wasn't the woman who'd walked out. The naive bride who believed in love and in her perfect family was gone. In her place was a woman facing the hardest choices of her life, choices that would shape not just her future, but the future of everyone caught in this mess. I took a deep breath and opened the door. When I stepped back into the ballroom, the air felt different. The noisy chaos had cooled into a frightening, heavy quiet. Many tables sat empty where guests had decided to bail on the mess. The ones who stayed huddled in small clusters, whispering and cutting glances toward the stage where Jason still stood, clutching the mic like a weapon. My father sat in a chair in the corner, head bowed, hands over his face, the picture of a man completely undone. Patricia, my mother, stood a short distance away, surrounded by close friends, trying to comfort her. Linda, Jason's mother, was speaking to a family attorney, probably already talking through the fallout. And Robert, my brand new husband, stood alone near the door, looking like he couldn't decide whether to stay or go. When our eyes met, I saw deep pain there, but also something else. Worry. Like he was afraid something even worse was about to drop. Jason noticed I was back and gave a small smile. Not the mocking kind from earlier, but almost sympathetic. And our bride has returned, he said into the mic, making everyone turn toward me. Elizabeth, you've heard a lot of painful truth tonight. But there's one last truth you need to hear. Maybe the most important one. My heart pounded. More? What could be worse? Jason, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. I think that's enough. You've said enough. Not yet, Elizabeth, he said, shaking his head. His tone shifted, sudden and serious. There's one more person in this story you need the truth about. Someone you're trusting with everything, even as your world is falling apart. He turned and fixed Robert with a cold stare. Right, Robert? Robert straightened, his face drained. Jason, don't do this. Do what? Jason said, all fake innocence. Tell the truth? I think Elizabeth deserves to know who the man she just married really is, and what he's known. I went rigid, ice spreading from my scalp to my toes. Robert, I said, what else are you hiding from me? Robert stepped toward me, reaching for my hand, and I stepped back. Elizabeth, I can explain. Then explain, I said, my voice shaking but firm. Right now. In front of everyone. Jason gave a soft laugh. Oh, I don't think Robert wants to do that. Maybe I should help him. He looked straight at Robert. Or do you want to say it yourself? Robert looked at me, then at Jason, eyes desperate. Jason, please, don't do this. Do what? Jason's voice turned bitter again. Shatter your perfect image in her eyes? Tell her you didn't just know about the finances at Peterson Consulting. You also knew about Margaret and the child? That you've known all of it for at least 8 months, and you still said nothing to Elizabeth? It felt like a punch to the gut. Robert knew about Margaret? About the secret child? He knew and kept quiet? No way, I whispered, shaking my head. Robert, is that true? He looked at me, eyes wet. Elizabeth, I wanted to protect you. Protect me? I almost yelled. By lying to me? By letting me walk into this marriage blind to all of it? Jason nodded, satisfied with my reaction. And that's still not all, Elizabeth. Tell my sister why you stayed quiet, Robert. Tell her about your deal with William. Deal? I turned to Robert, my chest squeezing tight. You had a deal with my father? Robert closed his eyes for a moment, searching for words. When he opened them, I saw real pain there, but also guilty acceptance. Elizabeth, he said softly, so low I had to strain to hear. I don't know where to start. I do, Jason cut in through the mic. Why not start with the email you sent William 8 months ago? The one I found with the rest. He pulled out his phone, scrolled, then read. William, I've considered your proposal. I'll keep quiet about Margaret and the child, as well as the company's finances. But I need assurance the investment in my startup will still happen after the wedding. Elizabeth doesn't need to know about these issues. She'd only worry. I believe we both want to protect her. My knees buckled, and if Susan hadn't been there, I would have hit the floor. Robert, I whispered. How could you? Elizabeth, please, he said, stepping toward me, but I threw up a hand. Don't, I said, my voice so hard I barely recognized it. Don't touch me. That's why Robert agreed to delay buying a house. Jason pressed, giving him no room to speak. Not because he was worried about overspending like he told you, but because he knew William couldn't back you financially. He was betting on the startup investment William promised to fund after the wedding. That's not the whole story, Robert burst out at last. Elizabeth, I was trying to protect you. I knew how much it would hurt you to learn about Margaret and the child. And I thought William would fix the finances. He promised me it would be handled. And you believed him? I asked, stunned. After knowing he'd been lying to the family for years? I made a mistake, Robert said, voice raw. I put my trust in the wrong person. But Elizabeth, I swear I did it because I wanted to protect you. Protect me, I repeated, laughing bitterly. Everyone wants to protect me. My father, you, all of you, think I'm too fragile to handle the truth. So where does that leave me, Robert? I married a man who didn't even respect me enough to tell me the truth. Elizabeth, I love you, he said, desperate. Everything else may be a lie, but that's real. For a split second, hope flickered. Maybe he did love me. Maybe he got pulled into my father's web of lies and made terrible choices. But Jason spoke again and crushed what was left. Oh, I almost forgot the most important part, he said, slow and clear. Robert didn't just agree to stay quiet for the investment. He also knew about William secretly transferring shares into Elizabeth's name. He knew that if the company went down, Elizabeth would be the one on the hook legally. And he still stayed silent. That was too much. I felt the strength drain out of me. How could Robert let me be exposed like that? How could he know I might face criminal charges and say nothing? Is that true? I asked, barely a whisper. You knew about the shares? Robert couldn't meet my eyes, and that was all the answer I needed. Elizabeth, that's... he started, but I'd heard enough. Don't. I cut in. Don't say another word. I can't hear one more lie. I turned away, feeling tears rise. All my life, I'd believed in love and honesty. I believed Robert was different from my father. I thought he was the one person I could trust completely. But he was part of the same web that had wrapped around me for years. Jason stepped off the stage and walked toward me. Elizabeth, I'm sorry I had to do this. But you deserved the truth before it was too late. I looked at him, not sure what to feel. Part of me was grateful he'd ripped the truth out, no matter how much it hurt. Another part was furious that he chose my wedding to do it. Why? I asked, my voice rough. Why today? Why at my wedding? Jason's eyes showed real regret for the first time. I found everything only a week ago, and I knew that after the wedding it would be much harder for you to get free, especially with the legal mess. I couldn't let you step into this marriage not knowing who you were marrying. Right then, Robert lunged at Jason, his face flushed with anger. Enough. You've said enough. He grabbed Jason by the collar and shoved him back a few steps. Jason didn't fight. He just stared at Robert, defiant. What are you gonna do, Robert? Jason asked quietly. Hit me for telling the truth? Before Robert could react, two of his friends rushed in and pulled him away. Robert, don't, one of them said. It's not worth it. I stood there watching the chaos swirl and felt a strange calm rise up from somewhere deep, like I'd moved past the pain and the betrayal and was standing on the other side, seeing it all with a new, sharp clarity. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. The noise from Robert and Jason's scuffle slowly died as people pulled them apart. The room sank into a strange, heavy silence, and every pair of eyes landed on me. Standing in the ruins of what was supposed to be my dream wedding, a strange calm washed over me. I walked toward the stage, where the mic still sat in its stand. Each step felt slowed down, my heels clicking on the polished wood floor, the only sound cutting through the quiet. My Vera Wang gown trailed behind me, the crystals glittering under the lights like a cruel reminder of all the fake glamour. When I reached the mic, I paused, scanning the room. My father stood now, fear written all over his face about what I was about to say. My mother's eyes brimmed with pain, but also a hint of pride. Robert looked at me with desperate pleading, and Jason, the one who lit this bomb, watched me with curiosity, and maybe even a trace of worry. I drew in a deep breath. "Thank you to those of you who are still here," I began, my voice clearer than I expected. "This is definitely not the wedding any of us imagined." A dry laugh came from somewhere in the room, breaking a bit of the tension. "I always thought I was lucky," I went on. "Born into a loving family with a successful father, a life full of privilege. But tonight, I learned that everything I believed in was a carefully built lie." I turned to William. "Dad, I've admired you my whole life. I believed you were the model of integrity and success. But your empire was built on lies and betrayal, not just to this family, but to everyone who trusted you." He lowered his head, unable to face me. "And Robert." My voice tightened as I turned toward the man I had vowed to love hours earlier. "You had the chance to be honest with me, to tell me what I was walking into. Instead, you chose your own interests over my safety." Robert took a step forward. "Elizabeth, please." "I'm not finished." My words cut him off sharply, and he froze. "I trusted you. I thought we were a team. But you knew I could face serious legal consequences and you said nothing. What kind of love is that, if it doesn't come with honesty and trust?" Tears pricked my eyes, but I held them back. This wasn't the time to cry. "And Jason," I turned to him, my voice softer but steady. "I don't know whether to thank you or resent you for choosing my wedding day to drop all this. But I do know one thing. No matter how messy your method was, you gave me something no one else in this room could. The truth." Jason gave me a small nod, rare respect flickering in his eyes. "Now I stand here, in the wreckage of my life, and I have to decide what comes next. Not about this wedding, because clearly, that's over." I slipped the ring off my finger and set it on a nearby table. "What matters is what I'll do moving forward." I swept my gaze across the room, meeting face after face. "To the investors and partners here tonight, I'm deeply sorry. I didn't know the truth about Peterson Consulting. But I promise I'll do everything I can to make sure people are treated fairly. I won't run from responsibility even if it was forced on me." Line. From the back, Richard Hoffman, the CFO, called out, "Elizabeth, you don't need to do that. None of this is your fault." "Maybe not," I said, nodding. "But my name is Peterson, and I won't let that name stand for lies and betrayal. I'll do what's right even if my father didn't." I turned back to William. "Dad, I want you to contact the family lawyers immediately and begin full transparency about the company's finances. No more lies, no more cover-ups. If you won't do it, I will." He nodded slowly, pain etched across his face. "I'll do it, Elizabeth. I'm sorry I've failed you. As for Margaret and the child," I said, my voice firm, "I want to meet them. Their family, no matter the circumstances. And I'll make sure that child is recognized and supported." My mother gasped, but she didn't argue. She knew it was the right thing. "And the will, the shares." My tone hardened. "I won't be the scapegoat for Dad's mistakes. I'll hire my own lawyers, not the family's, to protect myself and make sure I'm not punished for things I never did." Then I turned to Jason. "And I'll do whatever I can to make sure you're treated fairly in the inheritance. What Dad did to you was wrong, and I won't let it stand." For the first time, Jason looked genuinely surprised. He hadn't expected me to stand with him. Finally, I said, my voice softening, "I need time. I need space to figure this out, to decide my next steps. So I'm leaving tonight, not to run away, but to find myself in the middle of this wreckage." Susan stepped up beside me, her presence steady. "I'm coming with you," she said. "You don't have to face this alone." I gave her a grateful smile, then turned back to the room. This isn't the ending I dreamed of for my wedding day. But maybe it's the ending I needed, the end of lies, and the beginning of truth. I stepped down from the stage, feeling oddly lighter. Robert moved toward me, eyes desperate. "Elizabeth, please, can we talk? In private?" I looked straight into his eyes. "Not now, Robert. Maybe one day, when I'm ready. But not now." I walked past him toward the door. My mother met me halfway, wrapping me in her trembling arms. "You were so brave," she whispered. "I'm proud of you." "I just need time, Mom," I said, holding her close. "I'll call you soon." Den. At the doorway, I turned once more, looking at the room where just hours earlier I'd walked in full of hope, and now was leaving with a shattered heart but a stronger spirit. Jason stood nearby, watching me with a hard-to-read expression. I gave him a small nod acknowledgement, maybe even gratitude. He nodded back, and in that moment, a strange bond formed between us. Not family, not friendship, but an understanding between two people who'd both survived the same web of lies. With Susan at my side, I stepped out of the ballroom, out of the wrecked wedding, out of the life I thought I knew. Outside, the cool night air wrapped around me. The ocean waves still broke against the shore. The stars still glittered overhead. The world kept turning, no matter what had just happened. And so would I, stronger, wiser, finally free from the lies that had shaped my life for far too long. I stepped out into the parking lot, the silk of my wedding gown rustling with every step, the ocean wind tugging loose the carefully styled curls from that morning. Susan walked beside me, keys in hand, ready to get me out of here as fast as possible. "We'll go to my place," she said firmly. "You can stay as long as you need. Nobody's gonna bother you there." I nodded, grateful to have her at my side in this moment. But just as we reached the car, a voice called out behind us. "Elizabeth, wait." I turned. No surprise, it was Jason. He'd taken off his jacket, and he was holding a half-empty bottle of whiskey. Susan immediately stepped in front of me like a guard. "Haven't you caused enough damage for one night?" "I just want to talk to my sister," Jason said, his voice softer than before. "Just a few minutes." "No way," Susan snapped, but I touched her shoulder. "It's okay," I said quietly. "I think we need this." Susan frowned. "You sure? After everything he just did?" "I'm sure," I nodded. "Wait in the car? I won't be long." Reluctantly, she agreed, giving Jason one last warning glare before climbing into the car. That left me and Jason standing face to face in the empty lot, the sound of waves crashing faintly in the distance. The moonlight cast long shadows at our feet. Hard to believe that only hours ago, I was a glowing bride and now, broken. Everything about me had changed. "I didn't think you'd actually talk to me," Jason said first. "Neither did I admitted. "But maybe we've owed each other this conversation for a long time." He nodded, then held the bottle out. "Want some?" Normally, I'd never. The perfect Elizabeth Peterson would never drink straight from a bottle. But tonight, I wasn't her anymore. I took it, swallowed deep, feeling the burn slide down my throat, then handed it back. "Why?" I asked. "Why today? Why my wedding?" Jason let out a long breath, eyes dropping to the ground before meeting mine again. "I only found out a week ago. I stumbled on those emails on my mom's computer. She'd known about Margaret for years, but she never told me. And when she realized William was lying to her about the company's finances, she decided I should know. So she wanted you to find them," I said. "Yeah," he nodded. "But the choice to expose it all today, that was mine. And I know you're wondering why." He took another pull from the bottle. "At first, it was pure anger. I wanted revenge on William for years of being treated like I didn't matter, for cutting me out of the will, for stealing my college fund. I wanted to burn down what mattered most to him, the perfect Peterson family image." I nodded. "And I was part of that image." "Exactly," he said without hesitation. "You were the perfect daughter, his pride and joy. And me? I was just baggage." The words stung, but I couldn't deny the truth in them. William had always treated us differently. "But then," Jason went on, "when I dug deeper, when I found out about the shares in your name, about how William was setting you up to take the fall, I realized I couldn't let you walk into that marriage blind. Not with Robert in on it, too." "You could have told me privately," I said. "Before the wedding. There were other ways." "Maybe," Jason admitted. "But I wasn't sure you'd believe me. And I knew William and Robert would spin it, cover it up, make sure you never knew. I needed you to hear the truth with proof, with witnesses, so you couldn't ignore it." I stayed quiet, turning it over. He was probably right. If he'd come to me in secret, I might have brushed him off, clung to the story I wanted to believe. "I don't expect forgiveness," Jason said, breaking the silence. "I know I destroyed your big day, but in the end, it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about making sure you knew the truth before it was too late. For the first time in years, I really looked at him. Not as the bitter stepbrother, not as the family outsider, but as someone scarred by his own pain, someone who'd lived in my shadow for too long. You know, I said softly, all these years, I never really understood why you seemed to resent me so much. I didn't see how differently Dad treated us. You didn't see it because you didn't have to, Jason replied, no accusation in his voice. You were the chosen one, loved without question. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. I'm sorry I didn't see it. Sorry I never spoke up. He shook his head. Not your fault. We were both victims of William, just in different ways. We stood there in silence, staring out at the dark ocean. For the first time, I felt something like understanding pass between us. Not love, not even forgiveness, but a bond formed in shared scars. So, Jason finally asked, what are you gonna do now? I'll do what I said, I told him. Hire my own lawyers. Force the company into transparency. Meet Margaret and the child. And, I met his eyes. Make sure you're treated fairly in the inheritance. You don't have to, he said, surprised. I know, I answered. But it's the right thing. And it's time the Peterson family started doing what's right. Jason's lips curved into a real smile, maybe the first I'd ever seen from him. You're stronger than I thought, Elizabeth. I'm stronger than I thought too, I said, a small smile tugging at my own lips. Maybe it's time we actually got to know each other. He nodded. I'd like that. I glanced toward Susan's car, knowing it was time to go. I pulled out my phone and handed it to him. Put your number in, we'll talk again. He did, handing it back. When our hands brushed, there was a strange, fragile connection between us. Goodbye, Jason, I said, turning to leave. Elizabeth, he called after me. I stopped. I really am sorry about the wedding. A sad smile crossed my face. Maybe it wasn't the ending I wanted, but maybe it was the ending I needed. With that, I walked toward the waiting car, where an uncertain but honest future was waiting for me. 3 months later, the autumn sun streamed through the tall windows of the law office, its last warm rays catching on the polished table where a thick stack of papers waited. I sat upright in the leather chair, pen in hand, ready to sign. This was the end of months of negotiations, arguments, and more than a few tears. Please sign where it's marked, Miss Peterson, said Miss Murray, the sharp-eyed attorney across from me. This is the final agreement for the restructuring of Peterson Consulting. Oh, I glanced around the table. Jason sat opposite me in a crisp suit, looking nothing like the furious man who'd crashed my wedding 3 months ago. Beside him, his lawyer. At the head of the table was William, my father, who looked older, diminished, but oddly lighter, as if laying down the weight of his secrets. I signed page after page, a strange relief building with every stroke of the pen. Under the agreement, Peterson Consulting would be split into two. One portion sold off to pay debts and compensate investors, the other restructured into a leaner, more transparent firm. Jason and I would be equal shareholders. William would step down completely and face legal consequences far lighter than they could have been thanks to his full cooperation. That's it, Miss Murray said as I signed the last page. I'll file these with the court and regulators. Congratulations, you've reached a fair settlement. Later, Jason and I rode the elevator down together. Over the past 3 months, we've started to build something new between us. Not closeness exactly, but respect. Understanding. How's it feel to be co-owner of a consulting firm? He asked as we stepped into the lobby. Honestly, a little terrifying, I admitted. But also, exciting. A new challenge. Jason nodded. We'll make it work. This company's gonna be different, honest, transparent. We pushed through the glass doors into the cool fall sunlight. I talked to Margaret yesterday, I told him. She's agreed for me to meet Thomas this weekend. Thomas, my 10-year-old half-brother. A boy I hadn't even known existed until 3 months ago. He's a smart kid, Jason said. I think you'll like him. I smiled, though nerves twisted in my stomach. I hope so. We stopped outside a small cafe. Jason tilted his head. Coffee? To celebrate? Why not? I said. Inside, over steaming mugs, we settled into a corner booth. Jason leaned back, finally asking the question I knew he'd been holding. So, Robert, you've talked to him? I looked down into my cup. A few times. He still wants to fix things. And you? Jason asked carefully. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me still loves him, but I don't know if I can ever trust him again. Jason nodded. You don't have to decide now. You've got time. No. Exactly, I said with a small smile. That's something I've learned. Life doesn't always need a perfect plan. Sometimes it's enough just to be honest with yourself. For a while, we sat in comfortable silence, watching people rush past outside, each carrying their own stories and secrets. You know, I said at last, as awful as it was, part of me is almost grateful for what happened at the wedding. Without that day, I might have spent my whole life living in a lie. Oh, Jason gave a faint smile. Sometimes the ugliest truths end up being the best gifts. When we left the cafe, we split at the corner. Before walking away, Jason said, after you meet Thomas this weekend, maybe the three of us could do something together. An amusement park, maybe? Something normal. The idea of a new kind of family, not perfect, not traditional, but real, made me smile. I'd like that. As I walked off under the golden afternoon light, I felt lighter than I had in months. My dream wedding had ended in disaster. But from the wreckage, a new life was taking shape, one built on truth, no matter how painful. And maybe, just maybe, that was the greatest gift I could have received.